I stole my amp from Pink Floyd's David Gilmour. I know you don't believe me, but hear me out, this story is a good one. Hey there, I'm Laurie Buchanan, and today I'm going to give you a little insight about how I became the owner of this beautiful Hiwatt Custom 50 from 1972. Okay, so back in 2016 we're in the final processes of recording the Cult Classics album, and I started to look around online for guitar heads as I knew that I needed a live rig for tours. Eventually, I came across an ad online of this really old beaten up Hiwatt. It immediately got my interest. The only issue was that the Hiwatt was in Chester. Now let me put that into context for you. Chester is 220 miles away from my house. That is 4.5 hours away, and I didn't have a car, but I could drive. So I showed the link to my brother Aaron, as I always do when I'm buying new gear, to see what he thought of it. He was totally in. So I knew that we were going to get the amp somehow, I just didn't know how. And I also knew that if we didn't get it soon, it was gonna be gone. Now the problem with Aaron is that he can bring out my mischievous side, and together we are a force to be reckoned with. Something like this with so much character doesn't come around often, so I knew we had to get in there fast. The only problem was Aaron didn't have a car either, so we constructed a plan to borrow my mum's car. Now let me tell you, our parents are very supportive in both of our musical endeavours, but borrowing mum's car to travel to a random guy's house 4 hours away wasn't gonna happen. And can I just say, my mum's car at the time was a brand new 16-plate Ford Fiesta with less than 500 miles on the clock. So, we knew we had to water down the story, so instead of saying we were going to go to Chester, we were going to go to Peterborough, which is only 2 hours away from where I live. She wasn't best pleased, but with our puppy dog eyes ingraining into her soul, she reluctantly said yes. We were in. So the next day we go to the guy's house, and you could tell that he was probably falling on some pretty hard times and needed the money. He had the amp set up in this tiny kitchen. I played one chord on that Telecaster, just one, and I knew that I had hit the jackpot.
Take my money.
Originally I was going to negotiate with the guy, but that amp was worth every single penny. In all honesty, the volume was probably up too loud, the windows were rattling, the tiny kitchen was rattling, but my heart was sold. The guy then pointed out to me that on the side of the head was the word lady. It was destiny. Since then, I've always named her Lady. Now, I'm not one for naming my equipment, but I knew this amp was special. He then explained to me about how the amp had become so road worn, and the truth was, it had toured all over the world without any form of a flight case. He also couldn't promise me that a few beers hadn't been spilt inside of it over the years. It just adds to charm. But with all of the abuse it's taken, it's still going strong, and if that's not a tip of the hat to Hiwatt's build quality, then I don't know what is. As we were packing up and about to leave, the guy then said that prior to our arrival, he had taken a phone call from a guy that wanted the amp for a better price. He then went on to say that the person calling was the guitar tech of Pink Floyd's very own David Gilmour, and that David Gilmour actually wanted the amp. For mates rates, David Gilmour, come on, you've probably got all the Hiwatts in the world. Now obviously I can only go by what this guy's telling me, but after purchasing the amp and putting it in my car and just about to leave, why would the guy then decide to tell me that David Gilmour wanted the amp? It makes no sense, and I choose to believe it. So by the time we're leaving, I remember that we're still 4 hours away from home, and Mum's expecting us back soon. So to stop her from worrying, we decide to text her to say that we're stopping off for some dinner. Obviously she believes her two very trustworthy children and decides to leave us be. By the time we got home, the car had over 1,000 miles on the clock, so we knew we had some explaining to do. Better now than never. We knew our parents weren't going to take it lightly, but the car was back safe, we were back safe, and most importantly, the Hiwatt was back safe. So me and Aaron sheepishly walk into the house to break the news. Our parents then confirmed that yes, if we had said we were going to Chester in their brand new car to get an amp, they would have said no. So yes, our master plan worked, and they were not happy. Eventually, they did see the funny side of it, but kids, if you're out there, don't steal Mum's car. After touring the amp around the UK for approximately a year, I then gained the attention of Hiwatt themselves. They invited me to their headquarters in Doncaster to check out some of their equipment and also service the amp. The guys at Hiwatt were super interested in how the amp would hold up considering its looks. They ran all sorts of tests on it, including measuring it with the oscilloscope, and everything came back perfect. Now I knew that my amp was something special, but having Hiwatt confirm that you've bought a diamond is cool. They then went to look at the tubes and realised that it still had the original Mullard tubes in it. Now truth be told, this is where my amp knowledge gets a little bit hazy because I wasn't sure what a Mullard tube was. I'm sure some of you gearheads know what that is. Now there's just one thing I wish I had taken a video of when at the Hiwatt HQ, and that was the amount of grime that had came out of that head. I've never seen anything like it. Honestly, it was probably a fire hazard, so thank you Hiwatt for sorting that out for me. Anyway, not only did I leave Hiwatt with a tip-top condition head, I'd also left with an endorsement and a speaker cabinet that I still use today and haven't returned. So thanks Hiwatt. So let's go into a little bit of detail about what this amp does. As you can see, it's pretty basic. I'm pretty basic too, so it works well. It's got normal and brilliant inputs. This is nice because if you patch them together, you can use the two volumes and blend them. If you don't understand what Brilliance does, it basically is a brighter sound. I run this amp with a Fender Telecaster Deluxe, which is bright already, so mixing the two is really nice. Over here you've got bass, treble and mids. Nothing crazy here, pretty simple. You've got your presence and you've got your master volume, obviously self-explanatory, and then your standby and your main switch. What I love about this amp is that that is all it needs, and to be honest, I don't really have a setting for this amp, it just sounds great. I've had amps in the past where there have been so many buttons and dials and I feel like I'm forever chasing something unachievable. Or maybe that's my lack of tonal skill, but this Hiwatt is a boss, so I don't care. As you can see, what's interesting about this amp is that it doesn't actually have a second channel. If you want to get it to overdrive, you just have to use the old-fashioned method and crank it. Personally, cranking this all the way up to 10 isn't always ideal for me with the bands that I tour with, so I tend to use a distortion pedal, so that's what leads me to my next point. This amp works amazingly well with pedals. It's just so clean that you have a blank canvas to work with. I run a fairly big pedal board, so having a head that has such an honest sound is really nice. You can see here that the amp is actually missing the Hiwatt logo. Originally I was going to get it replaced, but once I came to my senses and realised you don't mess with history, I just left it. Switching to the back, the theme continues, is still pretty simple. As you can see here, you've got your two outputs, you've got your ohmage, and what's interesting about these, it's the same with the voltage switch as well. You actually have to pull these things out, and if you lose them, you're pretty stuffed. So if you were to change these, it's a full-on pin connector. Obviously you choose your setting here, so if I wanted 16 ohms, just change it to 16. If I wanted 8 ohms, go back to 8. One of these did come out once and it wasn't very fun. You've got your type, your model and serial number there. I've covered up my serial number for obvious reasons, but as you can see the model number is a DR504 and there's my little service sticker by Essex Amp Repairs. You've got your kettle lead output. Obviously this has been altered over the years, as you can see. This is your voltage output. Now when you're touring, understanding this switch is a must. If you're touring in the UK, it's 245 volts. If you're touring in the EU, it should be 225 volts. And if you're touring in America, it's 115 volts. I make sure that when we're touring between countries that nobody touches the amp before I say so. Sometimes I have to watch over-enthusiastic stage crews. I know they mean well, but if I'm going from the UK to France, for instance, and I'm doing a festival, I try to make sure that the pins are in the right place prior to them handling the equipment so that they don't accidentally damage it. Here are your two fuses. So if you were to take this amp to a different continent, the fuses do have to change. Currently what is in this amp right now is a 1A fuse rated for 240 volts, which is set for the UK. If I was to play this amp in North America, I would actually have to double the amperage on the fuse to make up for the voltage drop-in by half. So a 3A fuse would be recommended. Thank you to Rob at Hiwatt for letting me know about this. I didn't actually know anything about these fuses. I've never had to travel this amp that far. Obviously this amp will probably never go across to America or North America. Really, as far as it goes is the UK and Europe, because we will travel by van. She's just way too precious. I'll just show you the side of the amp here where you can see the very old spray painted word lady that the guy said was from his old band or something from his old band. I actually love how faded it is, how you wouldn't necessarily see it, but it is there. You can see it very faintly. If the original owner's watching, let me know what this was from, because I find it fascinating. Adds so much history to the amp. But all I can say is thank you for selling me the amp. It's brought me tons of joy and tons of good luck, actually. I don't think this amp has ever failed on me on stage, and normally it's the power of the venue that messes with me, not the power of the amp. And obviously here you've got the original handle. This bit here is snapped, but that hasn't affected the handle at all, and it happened before I even owned the amp. So that is my story about how I became the owner of a custom Hiwatt 50 from 1972. Please hit that subscribe button and I'll see you in a future video.